Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby BABB. Today, I'm really excited to bring to you a company I've heard a lot about recently. They've recently been featured as the best workplace for sales professionals in the Financial Technologist magazine. Extraordinary accolade. I've spoken to them a lot about what they've done to do that. We're going to unpack a little bit more about that later on. We're also going to talk about what they're doing, their journey so far, loads and loads of things to talk about. But it's Louis and Nasri from Hokodo. How are you guys?
Hey, very well. Thanks for having us today.
It's an absolute pleasure. Good to see you guys. And look, really exciting story you guys are doing. And as I say, loads to unpack. But before we get into it, Louis, give us a little bit of background about Hokodo and your background as well, please.
Yeah, sure. So our mission is to bring B2B e-commerce into the 21st century. So we empower merchants to grow by offering better payment terms to their customers. So you can think of it as a kind of BNPL solution, but for B2B. So that's what we do in a nutshell. We're all about creating the best payment methods for the world of professional trade.
And this has been something where there's been so much hype around recently. And I think, I speak about this a lot over the last couple of years. I think we've seen massive and rapid digital innovation and solutions that have been needing to be made for a long time and sort of elevated themselves, which you guys have absolutely seen that story coming through. As we talk to us a little bit about that sort of world of B2B, B2C, and how you guys have found this niche in the marketplace and have developed accordingly.
Of course, what we've seen in that B2C world at the moment is a driven change in consumer behavior. So we expect things to be in stock all the time. We expect things to arrive same day or next day. And we also expect to be able to pay on our terms and pay how we want to pay. And that has very much been amplified with the pandemic over the last 2 years, where we've been stuck at home and forced to only be able to buy things online. And what we're seeing now is a very fast growing trend is that behavior and those expectations are making their way into the way businesses buy from each other. So a business would want to say, okay, I need to be able to offer my stock all the time. I need to be able to make sure I can deliver it next day. And I need to give my customers the flexibility to pay on their terms. And it's not that they can't offer flexible payment terms today. They can, but it's very manual and there's a lot of risk involved. So if you assume I'm a trade customer or a business buyer and I want to pay on an invoice, I may have to fill out a few application forms. I may have to send over some proofs of address and some identities and some accounts before the business I'm buying from gets comfortable that I will pay them back in 30 days or 60 days or whatever it is. So what we've seen at Hokodo is the ability to enable a merchant to offer those flexible payment terms at the point of sale, at the checkout, instantly. And when I say instantly, I mean sub-millisecond instantly, enables them to not lose business, make sure they're giving their customers the ability to buy flexibly, and ensure that they get repeat purchase as well. And those trends are only going to increase now as we move forward in the digital age of e-commerce, and the consumer trends continue to drive the way businesses buy from each other as well.
I think this is, you talked there about consumer trends and I talked about it before, the escalation of digitalization over the last couple of years. That instant gratification is something we're looking at, and common themes that I look at, the golden threads between companies who've been high performance over the last few years has been either cost reduction or process improvement or experience improvement or speed or efficiency. And it seems you're putting all of those into a glorious fusion alongside one of the things there which allows your customers to effectively make more money and make it quicker, which makes it a super powerful product for you to be selling. And we're going to come on to that in a bit, because that was a big part of what we talked about the great the workplace and the top 1% workplace awards. Was about making it a powerful sell for the team to be able to push on that.
It's absolutely right what you said. If I could just jump in there, because there's really something fundamental in how e-commerce is evolving. If you take a step back, you have companies like Shopify, Stripe, Klarna, Amazon, PayPal that have defined the benchmark for what the user experience should be when purchasing. And you still have, a lot of people in B2B still in front of blue screens doing procurement in a way that's just like, feels like the 20th century, and we're in 2022 now. And the crazy thing is that trade credit, those payment terms that Naz was alluding to, they already exist today in the offline world. Like about half of B2B trade is done on credit terms today, but there isn't today a good payment method in B2B that allows you to offer those payment terms when selling online. And that's the crux of the issue that we solve. And creating that frictionless checkout experience is really what Hokodo is all about.
And this fascinates me, Louis, because you talk there about identifying the issue, and that usually comes from sort of the pain of being on the other side and recognizing it as an issue. Talk to me about the journey. Talk to me about how this was brought up. Where you are today and where you've come from to allow it to happen, because it's been a hyper growth story. It's been a bit of a rocket ship you're creating over there.
Yeah. So back in 2014, I was working at a company that focuses on credit insurance, which is the insurance against unpaid invoices. So it's in that world of B2B trade. And it really struck me at the time that we had two big issues. Number one, it's a good product, solves a real pain point, unpaid invoices. That's one business failure out of 4 is caused by a debt or a client not paying on time. So it's a big issue, but the product was only sold to large companies. So basically the whole long end of SMEs, even mid-sized companies, were not addressed. And the second big issue that we had with our product was that it worked very well in the offline world, but didn't work online. And we could see that B2B trade was massively shifting to the web, that B2B marketplaces were being created. And these two things meant that the world is going to need a way to trade safely online with payment terms. And that when that mismatch happened between what we had in-house, the legacy tech stack, and where B2B trade was actually headed.
And so this has been that was the evolution of where the idea came from. Talk to me about how it's developed so far, and the sort of soup to nuts of where we're at.
Yeah, so you're right. This was just like the first germ of, oh my God, there might be something in there, and it's a long journey between that and now Hokodo being more than 60 people, and I think it all started in 2017. We had a beer with my co-founders Richard and Sammy, and we decided to give it a shot and create the APIs that would make payment terms available to merchants. And I think the first turning point for the company was in 2019 when we were awarded a 2 million euro grant by the European Union as part of their Horizon 2020 program. And that was because they recognized that the solution that we were bringing was actually solving a massive pain point in the market and giving all those SMEs purchasing online the payment terms that they deserved and that they couldn't get otherwise. Yeah. So that that was the first catalyst and gave us.
It goes above and beyond just. Sorry to cut across. I find this fascinating because it's not just, as you say, the investment comes in because this isn't just solving a problem for an individual segment of a marketplace. This is solving a major. It's a global issue, issue, right? And that gives you scale, which is really exciting in terms of where it goes, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they really viewed it as a solution that's going to improve the SME economy in the European Union. Yeah. So that was really the first step in the journey. And then doing our Series A last year, after we had found that great product market fit, allowed us to accelerate. And there we go. Those were the main stages in the journey.
Talk to me about the sort of Series A, because you hear various different stories about how easy, hard, exciting, with a product like that that's had that sort of funding behind it that solves the issue it does. I imagine that was a decent process for you, as opposed to the pain that some people feel with it. You must have been turning down partners as opposed to trying to attract them, which I think creates a really interesting issue about how you make sure you've got the right partners. Because my belief is that Series A and Series B hinges around, we know that the numbers of successes and failures around, Series A, Series B backed businesses. The successes are generally around the partnerships and making sure that those partners who you're bringing in there are aligned to your values. Talk to us about that and how you made that sort of decision making.
So it was an interesting one, because we had initially planned to do the Series A at the end of 2021. So it wasn't yet on the cards, but yet we were at the beginning of that hockey stick where it was visible that we were signing more and more merchants, that the product was working, that the usage and the feedback was great. And at that point, we started to get more and more inbound from VCs.
Yeah.
And I think we were very fortunate to be able to choose two of the most prominent VCs in Europe, with Mosaic and Notion, who both bring different perspectives. Mosaic are more very strong on the embedded finance side, understand how to build a lending business. And Notion are really SaaS scale-up specialists. Yeah. So having that complementarity between the two VCs, plus our historical backer Anthemis also following in that round, gave us the great platform to be able to accelerate. So that was the story of that Series A.
And that creates this sort of growth trajectory that you've been on so far. Nasri, tell us a little bit about that sort of journey. Tell us about some of the when you scale quickly, you get companies there who sometimes overgrow their processes, companies that can almost grow too quickly at various different stages, and you get others who it becomes water off a duck's back and get things right in place with good advisors around that. That's something there which helps effectively smooth that pathway. How's it been? Tell us about some of the lessons.
I think it's been a bit of all three of what you've just said, actually. So, but no, you're absolutely right that scaling is potentially part art, but majority science. And you have to make sure you've got the right metrics in place to know when to scale and when to start turning the pipes up. It was evident that when I started talking to Louis about the opportunity for me to come into the business, they had already had that product market fit. They had two very successful account executives who were out in the market, already speaking to the merchants and starting to close some deals on their own. And they had an incoming sales development representative that was coming into the role to start making the hype and get people interested in Hokodo. And it's very delicate when you come in as a sales leader to not disturb what's happening and what's working, but start to build the foundations for growth and look at the components that are required within effectively the growth engine to make sure that the processes are scaling with the speed and pace that the business requires. If you implement too much process too quickly, you lose the excitement, you lose the flair. People start to think, well, we're not flexible anymore. We're not going to be able to speak to these merchants because they don't meet this certain criteria. So it's about putting in the processes that are going to help the team and the business build something that's going to start becoming more repeatable, but start to become more predictable as well. And that's when then if I input another X amount of pounds investment or another 3 or 4 people into this team, we can predict we're going to have these results coming out at the end. And we're very much at that level now where we've got the right models in place, the right metrics that we're tracking, but also as a team, it's still enjoyable because it's not just process driven and metrics driven. We're out there having fun and we're adding art to the science.
Yeah, I love that blend of art and science and how it sort of comes together, because I think it's you can quite often find people going down one of two tracks on that, where it is all chaotic and in the growth, and it's all about sense and feel. And those are quite often those sort of owner-led businesses where it's all been done on that, and it's that friction that happens between investors and the new world versus this is how we've always done it and this is my baby, etc., etc. And then also that pure scientific part where it becomes too prescriptive and the culture's eroded from it. My understanding of Hokodo has been that you've managed that really, really well. Louis, what are some of the sort of things that you've experienced within that?
I think what Naz highlighted, that that tension between preserving the culture and keeping an enjoyable working environment, and at the same time accelerating and having lots of newcomers, putting in place some processes, is that constant tension which every scale up goes through. And it's really a fine balance where if you look at Hokodo, we were about 20 people at the beginning of last year and 60 at the end. So it's like times 3. So that means that two Hokodians out of 3 are actually new joiners who weren't there at the beginning, are not these early disciples who understand and breathe the culture. So making sure that you can distill your values and keep the early employees engaged, while at the same time bringing in the new competencies that you need to scale up. That's what's fascinating from as a human adventure, as well as how you develop the business as well.
What are some of the lessons you've taken from that people can hear? Because there's lots of companies that are going on that growth pattern that don't get that right, and there's people who do. You seem to have got that blend right. If people are listening to this and saying, look, we're going through this, it's challenging at the moment, if you could get 2 or 3 different takeaways that people can look at that, and I'll put that out to both of you, what are some of the things there that you'd say, look, this is something which we've learned that we've done well, and what are some of the things that equally that you say, if we'd done it again, we'd do that slightly differently?
Yeah, I can take the first one, Lou, on kind of just recruitment. Sure. Part of the process, once you've got your models and you know where you want to get to, is getting the right people in place. And if you're trying to preserve culture, hiring too quickly can be really damaging in case you get the wrong kind of fit, or someone or a team where the culture starts to shift in the wrong way. Yeah. So one of the most important things that I'd advise anyone when they're trying to scale is really understand who it is you're trying to hire. What is the profile of the person you're trying to bring in, or the team you're trying to build, and note those attributes down and understand and learn how do you test for those attributes in an interview process or in a recruitment process. That's the first thing I'll definitely look at. So most people say hire fast and just get people in. I would say hire slowly, but hire in the right way. So make sure you've got the right attributes, the right profiling and the right scoring, because naturally that will end up hiring quickly anyway, because once you find the right people based on those attributes, you go out and you get them. But then hiring is just part A. Once you've got them in the business, they need to be able to get up to speed quickly, and get up to speed not only from a product knowledge and technical knowledge and the way we do things, but also from a cultural perspective as well. And making sure you've got the right onboarding in place for the new joiners that come in, which takes them through the journey, that sees them go to their first kind of conversion or productivity and revenue delivery, is really critical. So you can't just get them in because you think you got the right person, they can just get on with it. They need a lot of guidance. And in fact, if you've got the right profile in place, they're going to want the right guidance as well to be successful quickly.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. The people aspect is obviously something which has always interested me, and I think that you read and listen to blitzscaling and all the various books around that, and it sort of worries me a little bit about people trying to copy some absolute unicorns in terms of what they've done. And just keep on piling into that. It's not the same, right? It's not everyone's story is going to be the same as LinkedIn or Airbnb or wherever it may go. And I absolutely agree that sometimes it's done on gut and it's done on numbers and saying we need to have X amount of people come into the business, and you can erode that culture really quickly. I think that scoring and discipline around doing that allows everything else to scale if you get the hiring right.
Exactly.
What would you add to that?
Yeah, I totally concur with what Nas said. I think when you're starting to scale up, you need to be very deliberate about culture. So very often in the early stages as a company, you go through some hoops and pivots, refinements of your value prop. But at some point, when you hit your product market fit, it's hard to define, but you feel that everything is gelling, coalescing in the company. I'd be very wary of scaling up before hitting that PMF, because when you don't know exactly what it is that you do and who you are, then it's going to be a bit of a house of cards if the foundations are not very solid. But once you've hit that PMF, then taking a step back and thinking, okay, what is our purpose? What is our purpose as a business? What is our proposition? Now let's reconfirm exactly the values and what we stand for, because these are things that are probably not going to change for the next 2, 3, 4 years. Of course, you make you make process changes all the time, but you want that kind of rudder to be set. And what I meant by being deliberate about your culture is that if you do that introspection about what you stand for and you really define it, and it's clear to everyone what you're trying to achieve, then that's going to make the whole scaling up process much easier. Because as a company, you're always tempted to create processes, procedures. That's a natural tendency of every human group. But the longer you can run with a shared vision and shared culture, the fewer processes you will need. And that's something that's expressed very well in the Netflix culture. And whenever you can manage through principles and culture rather than through the letter of some procedure, the better it is for everyone. And you're going to be leaner also as a company. And then culture is something that you can actually hardwire into an organization. It's not something fluffy that you just, it's not like 5 words on a wall. And if you remember, for instance, Enron are very famous for having integrity as one of their values, and we know what happened. So setting the values and being very clear about them and deliberate, what I said, is kind of the first step, and it's not sufficient in and of itself. You actually also need to live the values, and by that, it's the hardwiring into the organization. So making sure that, for instance, you test for those values in the recruitment process. The values are also reflected in the year-end processes, in the evaluation processes. So, for instance, we don't want to have that syndrome of the smart asshole, excuse my French, where you have someone who's a fantastic contributor, but they just don't fit or refuse to work in the team. And and you need to really be true to those principles, that those behaviors are not going to be tolerated in the company. So these are all these things, plus leading by examples, making sure that your managers are always sticking to those values, that in the end will allow you to uphold the values and the culture and make sure that you don't drift as an organization. And it's very tempting to take shortcuts. But as Nas said, sometimes choosing not to hire a candidate because the fit is not optimal is the right decision. And then the other one that Nas also touched upon is the training piece. Very often, especially in scale-ups, you have these big hiring machines with talent managers bringing in dozens of people, and then the newcomers arrive and they kind of fall off a cliff. And beyond the first two weeks of onboarding, you don't have much. But at the end of the day, if you think, what's something that allows me to gain 10% of extra productivity, or even more, then training is one of the most obvious levers that we have as companies. That's, that will reflect into the productivity, but happiness at work, and the benefits that you get from just creating a training session, and Naz is brilliant at doing those things. It's like, you put in 5 or 6 hours of your own time to create a training session, and then you deliver it to 20 people or more. So the leverage is massive. And imagine if everyone in the company is 1% more efficient because of the training you launched. That's a massive return on investment.
Definitely.
So the recruiting and training are really two of the main main actions that we use to drive culture at Hokodo.
I think that's fascinating. There's so much to take away from that. It's textbook, really. You can see a library behind me of various different bits and pieces, and be it sport, business, military. Those fundamentals of doing it, the common sense of doing it, and the common practice of implementation are actually quite difficult to get right, because it seems so obvious, everything you've spoken about. But you highlighted Netflix. I got obsessed about Netflix recently, and the whole piece behind it, from initially seeing their talent deck a few years ago to then reading everything you can.
It's brilliant.
Rules and all that sort of thing. And it's I think one of the big pieces of what they talk about there is talent density, right? It's not about, they're still probably a smaller business in terms of headcount than people would imagine, but they have that very, very high barrier to entry, and make sure that great people are making great people better, and they don't lose the density of talent within that business. Which sort of segues quite interestingly into what we were talking about before. We spoke about the Financial Technologist magazine, your positioning in the top 1% workplace awards as the best workplace for salespeople. I know it goes beyond salespeople. You're a great workplace, full stop, for the rest of the business. And I know this isn't by accident. There's been a lot of design, as we've heard and intimated beforehand. Nasri, I know you've looked at this a lot. You spoke about recruitment, and Louis, when we did this for the interview for the judges, I know we spoke about the compelling aspect for salespeople about, and this is something which we've done a lot of work on actually from that conversation as a business, to talk really about, rather than here's your perks and benefits, this is about making sure that you've got a great product with a great market potential, and really strong mechanics and support behind it that makes it really compelling for people to come in there and then perform at their best, which allows them then to make everything else on top of it as well. Tell me about the work you've done here, Nasri, and why it is such a great place to work.
Thanks, Toby. No, I was completely honoured and almost shocked to have got that award, so thank you. I think it comes down to the most simplest aspect of a salesperson's mindset. They want to close deals, they want to get paid, and have fun doing it. Right? Those are the key 3 things that I think, in a basic terms, a salesperson will look at a business to decide if they want to go and join. But if you unpick all of that, there's a lot more that goes into making sure that not only those things happen, but that the salesperson is confident and happy in the place that they are. And that comes down to having a great product that has fantastic product market fit. And that when you call a prospect or you meet with a prospect, at the end of any meeting, they go, wow, thank you, Nasri. That's exactly what we needed. And that's exactly what we think we're going to get in terms of value. So having those conversations when you first come into a company and you realize, wow, the need is really there, we're really solving a pain point, gives every salesperson a lot of confidence in the product and obviously the business, which is the most important thing. They go on and they know they can close the deals and of course get their commission, which is what they work for, right? But what we've gone and really focused on is building upon the culture of the business as Hokodo as a whole and the values that we live by, and implementing those values in the day-to-day work of the sales team as a whole. And the first thing I say is I've actually made an error there, because we're not a sales team, we're a growth team. So it's not just, you've got your account executives and you've got your SDRs, but we're SDR, account exec, and marketing as one function within the company. So we all have the same mindset to grow the business, but grow it in the right way. And we've talked a bit about the training, and it's not just a 6-week course when you first join and here you go, here's all your training material and have you understood it, yes or no. It's continuous development, both on the individual level. So I would spend time with my team on an individual basis to run through their deals, to make sure they're working in the right way, that they're learning the frameworks and deploying them. But it's also a culture of accountability, because we do it as a team as well. So at least once a week, the team will sit together and they will all coach each other on process, on methodology, on the actual deals. So if someone brings up a challenge they're facing, it's not up to me to always answer it. The other members of the team are accountable and feel empowered to say, hey, Zach, why don't you try this? Or Ben, have you ever considered doing this or this? This is what worked for me. And it's that team coming together with accountability, driving the behaviors that we want as a business, but also that they want to be a team and be a part of as well.
You've mentioned that they're one of the key ingredients, I think, of salespeople. I think about it, with my team all the time. Look, I think, sales and growth is a great job when you're winning, and when you're losing, it loses some of that sort of appeal, right? And a big part of that is having that product and that market and that sell, which is so compelling and so satisfactory to it. The other side you mentioned there is the fun aspect, and for a lot of people over the last couple of years, fun hasn't been high on the menu for everything they've been doing, and it hasn't been necessarily that same sort of culture where everyone's been in and you can do some of the tribal things that bond and unite people together. Tell me a little bit about what you guys have done to maintain that sense of community culture, fun within the business as well.
It's a good one. I'll just bounce off your comments on culture. There's a great book called The Hard Thing About Hard Things, I think, from Ben Horowitz. And it's really enlightening, some of the things he writes in there. And in particular about culture, he says, culture is it's not the end of the road. Like you also need the product and the market to work, because you could have the best product, the best culture in the world. If you're not selling your product to a single client, then you're going to die with the best culture. And I think that really applies to the world of sales. But then culture and performance kind of breed each other. And the way we maintain fun at Hokodo, and one of our values is no passion, no points, because I think we believe
that's the
in
podcast by Eddie Hearn there as well, who runs that exact same thing. So I agree with you.
Yeah, and when you look at the best sportsmen, the reason why Nadal and Federer are still playing is not because they want to earn more money. It's because they have so much fun playing tennis, and that's the internal drive they have for their craft. And fundamentally, to us, there's like solving a meaningful problem, having an impact on your industry, and then another way for us to have fun, and we try to recruit around this, is learning. I think human beings in general are fundamentally curious. We love to learn, to do new things, to innovate, and allowing people to learn either in their own trade, develop as a salesperson, be coached, get 360 feedback. That's super important, and then learn and mingle with the other teams. Okay, what are you doing in marketing, in products? Fostering that cross-functional collaboration is something that's at the heart of the values. So that's why we'll sponsor trainings, books. All these things need to be for free, and making sure that we're in that lifelong learning mechanism, because of course then you can throw great offsites and have free pizza and a tennis table in the office. Those are perks. But if you don't think that you're solving a great problem and learning day to day, having playing ping pong on Fridays is not going to solve those issues in the first place.
It's the garnish.
You still play ping pong, though.
It's very much. I agree with that. That the ping pong and the bean bags has long been derided, but it's it's basically part of a cycle, isn't it? But the bigger part of it there is and I love that whole concept of making sure that the learning's there, that people are being good at what they're doing, that they're being set up to succeed, and that succeeding breeds the fun of what you're doing, and you're making a difference. Alongside that, it's the leadership, right? It's having a good team in place to make sure that you aren't reporting into someone who is an arsehole, as you said beforehand, who isn't going to be invested in that individual. There's a great book called It's the Manager, which talks about exactly that issue. One of the most important things there about the success or failure of a team and its culture is around that management layer and having that back into it. And I know that's something you've also invested into, to have a great team who are developing in that skill as well, because that's a learned art, right? No one's going to be immediately the best manager in the world, but it's
people join companies, but they leave managers.
Exactly right. And so I think there's so many things there that you're doing right, and it's brilliant to see a company that's obviously so invested in the journey rather than it just being accidental. It's a clear methodology and a strategy that's bound to deliver the sort of results that you've got. Let's look forward a little bit. The next sort of 3-4 years of the business. What's that look like? What are the priorities and where are we going with Hokodo?
So I think within the next 12 months, we're going to emerge clearly as the category leader in that B2B BNPL space. So that's that's the objective, which I think is realistic and achievable. After the Series B, for us, the future is going to be to also get across the pond and have a presence in the US. We're in an industry that's global. The best merchants, the biggest logos that Nasri's team wants to get, they're multinational companies, and they need multinational solutions. So if you take a large UK-based company, they will have customers in the US, in Canada, and it's really, really vital for us in the long run to be able to help them. And then on the 4 to 5 year horizon, I think we're creating right now the risk and data platform that's going to allow us to disrupt and reinvent trade finance. So I mentioned how the current incumbent industry is very much just looking after the needs of very large companies that understand the complexity of these products, like supply chain finance, letters of credit, credit insurance. But we're already today creating the building blocks that will allow us to productize trade finance. So in a way, under the hood of Hokodo, one of our biggest achievements is that we've recreated our own credit scores, our own fraud detection algorithms, have a collections team in place, do credit insurance in partnership with Lloyd's of London. And these assets that we're building now are going to become apparent in 4 to 5 years. And that's when I think we'll really reap the rewards of the long, patient work that we're doing right now. And this, BNPL frictionless checkout that's that everyone talks about, that's really the tip of the iceberg. But to really be able to deliver this, you actually need to build lots of assets under the hood, and that's what's going to pay off on a 5-year horizon.
So exciting, isn't it? I mean, just to talk about what you've achieved so far as being the tip of the iceberg, and then where it can go with Series A and Series B, Series B to sort of follow up. It's such an exciting journey, and it's so refreshing, exciting, invigorating. I'm sat here sort of excited about everything you guys are talking about right now. Just to find it inspiring to say, look, where the energy it gives to everyone around it is really, really good to see. We're also looking at something at the moment, which I think is really, and we've had this conversation before, where we're talking about the wider economy. So whilst there's some quite exciting stuff about growth happening in the marketplace at the moment and everything that's happening, there's also a couple of storm. You guys have got a good pulse on the economy. You're seeing things that are happening out there. Give us an overview of what we can expect to see over the next 12 months from a macroeconomic viewpoint, and how that impacts everything.
I think we're nobody has a crystal ball, so you'll probably quote me on this in 12 months. But I think,
to haunt you.
Yeah, in terms of the macroeconomy, we're really at a crux right now with the inflation creeping in, interest rates about to increase, already increasing in the US. And what we see at a very microeconomic level, and because we're in that world of payments, is that there are companies that are kind of walking zombies right now, and that have so insolvencies have been at a very low level for the past 2 years, but artificially low because we had so many government subsidies in the various European markets. And as governments unplug these programs, I think some of the zombie companies are going to actually file for insolvencies. So, don't quote me on it, but I wouldn't be surprised if we went into 12 or 18 months of a bit choppy waters, where there's a kind of macroeconomic adjustment with a few companies folding, and therefore a rise in insolvencies.
And alongside that, we're talking about this interesting thing, and I know you've got some thoughts on this as well, where we've got this sort of massive growth of the fintech market that we've seen over the last 2 years, and I love the way you termed it last time we spoke about this sort of two-speed economy, where we've got massive advancing and growth in one stage of it, and war for talent and no a lack of availability of skilled talent, and on the other side you're seeing people there who are being displaced through tech or not seeing that same sort of opportunity in other industries there, which on a social level creates a really interesting predicament to look forward to. What are your thoughts on that?
I'd say it's difficult to kind of, when you break that down and understand this market's exploding, all these people are being successful, all these people are earning what they're earning, and then you've got this other side of the fence where people are struggling to put food on the table and they're struggling to make ends meet with bills, and that's stretching into businesses as well and really tightening the cash flow on businesses. And one of the key things that we talked about right at the beginning was solutions like ours, or flexible payment term solutions. They're not there just to drive a merchant who's offering them growth. It's there to enable and help the SME, the small business, continue to strive and then really survive as well. But if they can purchase stock on flexible payment terms, sell that stock, get paid, and then pay back once they've got the cash flow in, it can help the economy start to survive as well. So it's we shouldn't lose sight of how great fintech is going, because there is another side of that economy that needs support, and hopefully some tech solutions like ours can thrive and drive that support. So we have always one eye on that, and we're not just there to help the merchant, we're there to help the customer and the buyer and the business on the other end as well.
It's a noble game, and look, I could be talking to you two for hours more. It seems like it's gone in an instant, but I've thoroughly enjoyed this, guys. It's been it's been great to hear. As I said, I'm sort of going to be leaving this conversation pumped full of energy and ideas and enthusiasm to go and improve in my business, and I hope that everyone who's been watching it will be doing the same in theirs. It's a great story to look at, and I wish you nothing but success moving further forward.
Thanks
if
so
people
much.
are watching this and they want to find out a little bit more, what's the best way to get in touch with you guys?
Hokodo.co, that's our website, obviously, and in my case, LinkedIn, email, these are great. So email louis@hokodo.co.
Nice and easy. Nice
and likewise, I'm very happy to be contacted on email or LinkedIn, and I'm just Nasri@hokodo.co.
Look at that. You're making it easy, guys. It's been an absolute, and that seems to tie in with the general theme of Hokodo as well. So keep making it easy. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thanks so much for sharing all the story, the wisdom, the learns that we've had over the course of the last hour or so. Absolute pleasure talking to you both, and I wish you huge luck with everything moving further forward. I don't think you're going to be needing it from a betting man, but keep it up. Thanks for coming on. No problem.
Thanks a lot, Toby. It was a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on another episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.